All right, welcome back to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to advanced tactics in Bannerlord. I'm continuing with a series of intermediate tactics for the player who's not quite ready, not quite advanced enough to be commanding 8 units in field command. In these episodes, we'll be trying to focus on both slower gameplay, not sort of the blitz and incredible lightning speed of some of our attacks, where it's difficult for the viewer to follow. We'll be doing more systematic attacks of our enemy. Now, I had originally planned on attacking this smaller force that was sieging our castle, but it looks like a larger force of the Southern Empire is willing to become victims for our next campaign video. You know, this is almost twice our size. You know, look at here, they're eagerly attacking us. We'll take the high ground up here, and into battle we go. I've been meaning to have an episode focusing on the Power of Skirmishers. I think the Power of Skirmishers is highly underrated in Bannerlord, and I've been waiting for just such an opportunity to demonstrate that power. Now, the Power of Skirmishers throughout ancient history was incredible. The famous hoplites, this was a Greek military unit that had awesome power. They were destroyed in a battle, I think it's the Battle of Latium, by the Athenians, in which hoplites without skirmisher support were utterly devastated by very lightly armored, very weak trooped skirmishers of the Athenians. So we're gonna try to demonstrate that here. Now you see what I'm doing with my 6th division. I've got it set with shields and then prioritizing towards throwing weapons, javelins, right? And I'm looking at some of these. These are some of my newer companions. Some of these guys are like 19 or 20 years old. They're like grandchildren of the original character. All of those units had throwing. If you need to pause and go back and see that, but all those units had 250 plus throwing, which gives you a skill where your javelins now penetrate shields, and it's amazing what it does. It literally explodes shields, and then in many cases, in one shot, it kills the person holding the shield. So in this battle, a little differently, our 6th division there, you can see it up in the corner. That is almost all skirmishers. There'll probably be some elite melee units in there, and there might even be some archers mixed in as well. Sometimes the game mechanics are not perfect. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to create essentially a kill zone here for my skirmishers. The 1st infantry is in the center. The 6th skirmishers, you can see, are across that riverbank, and I'm hoping that slows down the enemy when they come into approach, right? Now I'm backing them off a little bit because sometimes if your units are out front, the enemy will attack them first, right? So my idea is the enemy's going to come in, attack my 1st corps here, my main infantry wall with archers supporting them, and then I'll be able to move my skirmishers in for the kill. On the right, I'm also positioning the 3rd Cavalry in a shield wall. That's all they're doing, is trying to prevent the enemy cavalry from rushing in. Now notice the hero that's in charge of my 6th. Increased troop movement speed, right? Skirmishers had to be fast. If these guys are slow, bunch of pot-bellied, obese guys, well, they'd get killed. They'd get run down by cavalry. They'd get run down by other infantry that were more heavily armored, and they'd die. So we need speed. And then the other tactic we want to use is to have some distance, right? These are not going to be fighting melee, at least not in the early stages of battle, right? The enemy's going to have very high-level troops. This is the Southern Empire, so there'll be legionnaires and elite monablitons. We don't want to face those guys face to face, right? So what we're going to basically do is break out our Olympic, Olympic athlete handbook here and throw our javelins right through their fucking shields. I imagine I have 20 companions that are in this group that have that skill, and we're going to try to exploit that skill on the enemy today. Now, right now, I'm positioning them in a square, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want them to survive what is undoubtedly going to be a large cavalry wave. 130. Yeah, this is almost 250 enemy cavalry, right? So they have a lot of cavalry, of course, as their primary wave. And we're going to try to whittle that down. Now, while we're whittling that down, all I really want the other troops to do, I want the archers firing at them, but all I want the other enemy troops doing is preserving their life. The skirmishers, that 6th division, they're not even going to fight here for the first few minutes, so you have to bear with me. I could skip straight to this part for the purpose of the video, but I want you to understand this component of the battle as well. A lot of times when the enemy has this many cavalry, they will just keep their units back and let their cavalry go to work on you. Almost, if you're a fan of Braveheart, almost like the Battle of Stirling, which of course Didn't go very well for them, did it? Now, a more optimal strategy would be them concentrating their forces. If I was controlling the AI here, I would have my cavalry charging, but I'd be having them charge from the flank and the rear, while my infantry approached, aggressively attacked at the same time, and then archers skirmishing from a distance behind. Right? Then you'd have all your firepower commence together. But alas, the artificial intelligence is not very intelligent. It's more like artificial imbecility. We'll see. Sometimes they do coordinate. Some units, some kingdoms are better at it. I notice a much more difficult battle with the Aserai because they coordinate. A lot of times their infantry comes up and attacks you with their cavalry. Right now, it's hard to tell. Their infantry is moving up. Their horse archers are skirmishing, and I'm just trying to weaken the amount of cavalry they have. Right, the infantry is in there in a line. They're nice and defensive with shields. I've got these guys in a big square. Right, they're very protected from cavalry charges. And look what's happening with this cavalry division. I told them to form this line, and the enemy is like magnetized to it. Right, they're all jumbled up by it. And what that does is it kills their momentum, right? The game has a momentum-based combat system. If you're charging and running fast, and then you hit somebody in the face with a spear, an axe, or whatever it is, you do way more damage. Well, if you're standing still and you do the same attack, you don't do hardly any damage, right? So anytime you can kill the momentum, the speed of the enemy, you want to do so. So I notice a lot of the enemy units taking 150 plus points of damage and not dying. That's a sign of a very high level commander, probably multiple high level commanders in the enemy group. So once in a while people will comment that it looks like I'm just facing weak ass troops. Hey, I gained a level. I think that's 48 for this guy. Anyway, so I get people suggest, hey, aren't you winning because you're facing easy troops? Well, obviously not. If they're high-level lords enough that they're taking see, their infantry's piled up. If they're high enough lords, high enough level characters that they're taking 150 hit points, and still surviving. Look at how my own cavalry's jamming me up. It'll do that to you, right? It's a thing you got to be careful for. Anyways, finishing that thought, I interrupt myself a lot. If the enemy has troops that can handle 150 shot blow and still stand up, these are not weak units, right? We're fighting real armies here. Alright, so given that the infantry block is actually facing my skirmishers, I don't actually want to show you the skirmishers fighting right away, so I'm moving them back. I'm moving the 8th Corps behind them. Just kind of trying to encourage the enemy to attack my main block of infantry. Right, it looks like they have 160, 150 infantry still. It also wouldn't be a good fight for skirmishers, right? That's the whole point of skirmishers, is that they're using their range attack, right? Okay, you see the enemy moving in, but again, we've got more speed. With that 30% speed bonus, they're not going to be able to close the distance. Now, they're starting to get to the point where they're getting flanked. These guys are actually getting hit by our archers off on their right flank. It's our left flank, their right flank. So I might start to use our skirmishers here and kind of see how badly we can annihilate them. They seem hell-bent on attacking our skirmisher. Maybe they got a hold of our playbook today. So I'm going to bring our skirmishers up. Again, we can always fall back. If the enemy charges in quickly, we just fall back. Once we're close, we're going to move to a shield wall, and then I'm going to tell them to unleash hell. Basically, they're going to fire at will. Right? I just gave the command. And watch this fucking damage. These guys are holding shields, but that is not going to matter. Let's see, slow it down for you a little bit here. That way you can look at that guy right through his shield, just destroyed him. And look at the upper right. Every once in a while, glance at that upper right. These are mostly skirmisher kills as these guys unleash hell. Look at the axes. Look at that guy in the back. He's flying through the air. he got mangled. So that must have been a really good throw. It literally it lifted him out of his seat. And you can see what's happening now. They're wavering. They realize they bit off more than they can chew. They realize they can't catch us. We're faster than them, and even face to face with us, they don't want anything to do with it. Right? They're out of here. Now, part of the reason they're doing that is because we've killed so many of their units. The AI is programmed to regroup their troops. So I'll have my units hold fire here, and we'll set up another exchange. Right? You can see how devastating an exchange. They didn't even lay a hand on us. And we, all these corpses here. I like to come in and kind of pick up any of the shots that didn't make it. That poor guy. He's just sitting. Maybe he was the guy that got launched to the air. I don't think I've ever seen a guy launched that high. So we'll have another bout with this. Again, we're going against 2,000 enemies here, so this is going to be, and again, a slow, methodical battle. In some battles, I might have pushed into the enemy force there and tried to seize the initiative. When you have enemies that are running, a lot of times it's advantageous to attack them. Right? Their backs are to you, they're disorganized. That's a great time to attack. That's not the purpose of this video. I'm confident enough that with a slow, methodical whittling down of this army, we can defeat them even without that tactic. Look at that, 222 damage, and that guy didn't drop. So the only way that happens is very high-level perks with the, I guess you would call them nobles, that are leading that division. All right, I'm bringing up my first infantry here. There's actually some javelin throwers in those guys as well, so they'll be able to sort of join the attack. Now, again, it's a flanking maneuver. So we've got the 6th on the enemy's side here. We're actually getting too close. Let's move the 1st back a little bit. Again, this is a little variation of kiting, but the main thing, I mean, we could have battle, but I want you to show you the devastating effect of skirmishers. Right? So now the 1st is firing, and the 6th are also firing. This poor infantry line, so they're flanked. Look at all the javelins just flying in both directions, right? And it's just a screen of green. Right? Now some of it's Battanian fire, Battanian fine champs rather. They're mowing guys down with arrows, but a lot of that was just a devastating javelin throw again. Enemies regrouping once again. We're going to pick up some of the leftover javelins. Always take advantage of death just laying on the ground. Right? Obviously, it's even more damaging if you can add your own javelin skills to your line, right? If you can be part of the, that guy's lucky to live there. If you can be part of the javelin throwers, do so. I would strongly encourage anybody who's never tried to train a character to 250 throwing skill that you do it. It's amazingly powerful. This is just a side tip. You notice this little river gully here where the enemy's firing lots and lots of arrows. They've shifted into a defensive approach. I don't blame them after their initial massacre. But what I'm doing there is I'm just moving the 6th into that little river gully with shield walls up. That should dramatically decrease how much the enemy can hit them. You see the arrows flying over their head. Right? Anytime you can use the landscape to your advantage, do so. Some arrows are making it in. Not every one of these guys has a shield. It's not an optimal system. If I could prepare this division myself, every single guy, of course, would have a shield and javelins. You can actually see there's a Battanian Fiend champion at the back of the group there. That guy's not really useful in this formation. I want him with the archers, but hence this is the game's engine, so we deal with it. So I'm trying not to bore people watching. I've said this before in other videos, and we're going to do it here. The enemy's just kind of sitting back in the defensive struggle. Now, and you're playing your own game. There's nothing wrong with just sitting there and waiting it out. But in order so that this isn't a snooze fest, we're actually going to become the attackers here. Now, I'm not going to barrel in with infantry, right? We're not going to just barrel in and attack with melee, with hand-to-hand. We are going to continue to use our skirmishing damage and show you just how devastating the effect can be. Now, the enemy has many archers there, but we have 2 major advantages. I should explain this too. The 3rd Cavalry is coming up here strictly as a wall of lead. Right? That's just a big wall of steel or lead. All I want those guys doing is absorbing arrows while I move my 6th and 8th onto the flank. Right? You see them, I'm moving them directly behind them. Those guys are getting shot at, their horses are getting shot at. But these are really tough units. Some of those are noble units. I take a few shots at that noble bitch. It's really satisfying to land like a 200-yard javelin throw. So I've got this cavalry wall lined up. You can see them getting shot, and I just moved my 6th in. I rushed them up because I'm going to get this cavalry out of the way, and as soon as they're out of the way, shift these guys into shield wall, and then open fire. And watch this fucking destruction. Right? The enemy's getting enfilade attack, and what that means, I say that a lot, and some people have asked what that means. That means flanking. They're getting hit, flanked from the side. Right? I'm going to get right up in the face here of the enemy just so you can see this slow motion destruction. Probably take a few arrows in the face. That's okay. Look at all the javelins flying in there. And look at the death screen, right? This is, even though they have archers and we're attacking them with infantry, it's just an utter massacre, right? They're just getting obliterated. You can just see the javelins just flying in there, right? Decimated. Even their troops with shields are just getting decimated. This has to be demoralizing for the enemy, and of course you're killing them as well. Not only are they getting demoralized, their numbers are dropping rapidly, but they are being destroyed at range by infantry, skirmishers. So the first infantry looks like they're out of ammo, so I'm actually sending them in for melee here. With the 6th, I know they still have ammunition. Look at all the skills going up too in the lower left from guys gaining points. They're all just gaining tons of knowledge from this destruction. I told them to advance, so they're actually still throwing javelins, but they're moving towards the enemy. When you do F1, F4 for advance, instead of flat out charging, your skirmisher type units, right? That's my 6th on the left of the screen. They move forward till they're within range to throw, and then they throw. They don't just barrel in and get smoked by the first 10 infantry that surround them. They slowly move up, shields in tow, throw in there, and that gal still had a javelin to throw at the end of the battle. Now it's disintegrating, right? The enemy just got mauled at range. Now they don't have any idea how to fight, right? These are a combination of melee, but also archers, and they just lost a range battle. Well, there goes your arm. No blocking without an arm, and yours too. So the enemy at this stage, imagine in real life, if your enemy's ranged troops got destroyed by units that are not really supposed to be powerful ranged units. You survived that. Jesus Christ. These are tough troops, but nevertheless, we're just tearing them apart. So we may have one more setup here. This is a bunch of cavalry, so we're just going to mow through this, advance aggressively on the enemy at this stage. In real life, of course, the enemy would have already all put up the white flag. At this stage, the computer kind of fights it out. They do sort of a good sportsman job of playing the victim here. But at this stage of the battle, we probably killed 1,000, and I would guess we have less than 100 losses. So the infantry's running. Some of my units are pursuing, just on the hunt, on the prowl. And we may get one more chance to show javelins at work, but hopefully, just with this one battle, I can convince a lot more commanders out there, a lot more enthusiasts, that this is a strategy that you must employ sometimes. I don't always use it. Of course, it's part of a bag of tricks, right? Your tactical bag of tricks needs to have like 20 or 30 different options in there, because you're presented with different scenarios, right? You might be bottled in an area. You might have way less skirmishers than this battle, where you have to use different tactics. You might be against the Khazad horse archers, where they don't have many infantry, right? This is much more effective against infantry than it is against horse archers. In this case, though, the enemy had heavy infantry blocks, and we completely devastated them with this strategy. Just like that battle I was telling you about, right? Where the Athenians mangled the Spartans, right? It was a very similar situation. They weren't expected to win, but they came in with a tactic that was picture perfect, that was just custom made to destroy their enemies. They do look like they're forming up, legs and body parts flying everywhere. This is part of a new mod, by the way, if people are wondering. You can see information down in the comments. They look like they're forming up, though, one more group there, and we will try to give them one more sally of weapons. Now the loadout is important, right? And I showed it in a few other videos. I didn't get to it in this video. But if you're going to set up your companions, your heroes, your family members with high levels of javelin skills, make sure they have at least 2 stacks of javelins, right? You want shield, a weapon, typically a sword, and then javelins. Some of these guys actually have like a polearm or a 2-handed axe and 3 stacks of javelins. Now what that means is that they're throwing javelins still, even this late in the battle. So that's why I'm setting up one more attack here. That's my 1st infantry on the right there, moving in. Those guys can't wait to kill. The whole battle they've been fighting at range, and those guys are used to, they're used to getting their claws on the enemy. So my guys are up on the hill, and look at, they're still raining down death. You see guys flying all over the place. The enemy's trying to counter with their own little sad attempt. Get back in there and battle for this. But this really, for the enemy, this is a totally no-chance type situation. I still see javelins coming down. That guy just got taken out. Archers are firing. You're softening the enemy up way before you even have to have combat. Right? And again, this is ranged units firing against my infantry. They got one guy there, it looked like, out of like 50 deaths. Meanwhile, it's just a complete assault. So 1st Infantry marching in. I mean, at this stage, you can imagine the enemy morale. Look at, there's 100 arrows in every single guy's shield. They all look badass, and they're charging you after you've already been decimated wave after wave. Right? This would be a horrendous experience. In real life, enemies' morale would have broken a long time ago. A little note about that. It's really interesting, of course. Anybody who doesn't study history probably thinks that most battles, or a lot of battles throughout world history, there was one side completely killing every single guy of the other side, right? The current term that we use pretty accurately for that is annihilated, right? When an enemy force was annihilated, that basically meant that all of the troops, I mean next to all of the troops, were either killed or taken prisoner. Now most of the time lots were taken prisoner too. It was extraordinarily rare. I mean, like, there are very few cases where all of the enemies were killed in the battle, and in many of those cases it was prisoners that were taken and then summarily executed after the battle. So the point is that actual battles in the medieval era didn't have anywhere near this kind of casualty rate. Very frequently there would be 10% of the troops on the side that were lost, and that's not even killed. That would be killed and injured. 10%, and they would flee the field, right? And what that is that's realistic fear. Oh, by the way, this is, if you're approaching archers, you want to weave like that. It's kind of dizzying for the viewer, but that's how you get to range, or that's how you get from range into the face of the archers, so that you can then cut them to pieces. That's a skill you'll learn. If you haven't learned that yet, you're just kind of putting some variability into your movement as you move in. Then you can do your massacre work up close. You can use your shield too, but that's much slower. You can just bob and weave, and they will miss. I don't think I took a single arrow there. So I'll finish that point. Very few battles were there more than 20% casualties throughout history. In the Civil War or the Napoleonic era, and what was considered an incredibly bloody battle, the Battle of Eylau, there was like 20 or 25% casualties on both sides, and that was considered extraordinarily bloody. And again, that means killed and injured. So think about what that means. That means fully three quarters of the people on both sides were either very lightly injured or completely uninjured at all. That's amazing to think about, but that's a bloody battle. Just an interesting little perspective on history I wanted to share. So I'll keep adding little nuggets of history. I've got a huge historical database parked in my brain, and that includes the use of tactics like this, right? Taking it straight from this famous battle where hoplite elite infantry were destroyed by skirmishers. You can see we did the same thing here. 142 casualties for, what did the enemy have? 10 million, right? It looks like almost 2,000, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. I appreciate all the watchers, and I'll see you fellas next time.